You want to do the intro?
Oh, we ready? Sorry about that.
So we're just smiling. Looking all pleasant.
It feels good to be back, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Let Your Words Count podcast, where we spend a little time thinking about ways to improve our vocabulary by studying the words in the English language. We take a little time, we go through the history of the word, the definition of the word, and then we discuss our thoughts and interpretations. My name is Mike. That's Gary. That's Ethan.
Yo.
Yes. Welcome, everybody. We hope you stick around and maybe even learn something. I know I plan to. All right. Here we go. Today's word is authenticity. Authenticity. I'll go ahead and define it. Authenticity refers to the quality of being genuine, true to one's self, and aligning actions with one's values and beliefs. It involves being honest, transparent, and not pretending to be someone else. And that's our definition. And so now I think the next step is to visit the etymology. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So to etymology for the word authenticity, the word authentic comes from the Greek word authentikos, meaning genuine or principle. It was first used to describe something that was not counterfeit, real, or legitimate. That's spot on. So a little bit of history here, historical context. Historically, authenticity was often tied to the idea of truth in philosophy, especially in, existentialism.
Existentialism.
I'm sorry, I couldn't even read that right, y'all.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We're recording this at night. It's been a long day.
Right.
No, that's awesome. Philosophers like Sartre emphasized the importance of living authentically to find true freedom. Over time, the word has evolved to also encompass emotional honesty in relationships and personal growth. So that's a little bit of history behind the word.
Okay.
All right.
Love that.
G, you want to put a little bit in there?
Put a little stank on it.
Yeah.
That's no. This is an interesting one to me because like with a lot of the words we talk about, right? Emotion, authenticity kind of sparks a positive feeling, right? Because it feels like it's real self-expression. It feels like it's, someone being able to be true to themselves. But there is that aspect of authenticity sometimes can be difficult for people because authenticity, being true to yourself, true to who you are, what you're about, may lead to rejection or isolationism as well, right? You being true to yourself may not align or be compatible with the ways or thoughts of somebody else. So right offhand, I'm kind of in this mindset of, we always talk about balance on this as well, right? So this is a mostly positive feeling word. But the possible isolation or having to hide oneself and not being able to be one's true self can also have a significant negative impact on people too, right? But generally speaking, I think having that mindset of being able to be honest and open and express who you are, what your thoughts are, is a good thing, right? And when you have people around you that accept you, right, and love you, no matter how you express yourself or what you truly are, that's just always a gift and, kind of goes back to more of that positive side of it as well, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I agree. My first thought when I think of the word authenticity is how challenging it is to be genuinely authentic once you get past like the age of maybe 3, 4, something like that, because that's the time where you start to become programmed with whatever society or community that you're growing up with.
Wow.
Authenticity, we're born fully authentic. You come out of the womb screaming for anything you want. There's nothing more real and more raw than the way a baby expresses themselves.
True. Wow.
And so authenticity for me, I just think about how over time we can kind of become, there's this idea of the persona. Familiar with that? So we put on a persona, which is
Different,
in itself.
how is it different from the ego? I'm sorry.
So the ego is, and this is just my understanding.
Sure.
The ego is a person's sense of self.
Okay.
So how I believe that I am, what I believe myself to be, how I believe that, I present.
Got you.
The persona is more along the lines of the person that you know and the person that you know. Not necessarily the person that I am when I'm home by myself with nobody there.
Got you. Interesting.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So authenticity, it's hard to me, it's hard to mix those two because we have a persona. All of us do. Some of us have several personas, right? But in order to be authentic, my thought is, okay, is it possible? And I don't know, maybe we can, kind of touch on it, but is it possible to still have the necessary personas? Because I have to be one person to a small child, and then I have to be a different person to my wife, and then I'm a different person to my best friend, and I'm a different person to my boss. Interesting. So these are all ways that I present, not necessarily anything that's fake or but I have to engage with people on the level at which I deal with them, the relationship.
Right.
And so I think about how challenging it is to maintain authenticity, especially if I haven't got to the point where I really don't care what your opinion of my persona is. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can be authentic, and that goes back to kind of what you were saying about how authenticity, if taken to the, I want to say taken to the extreme, but I don't really know if that's the right way to put it.
I know what you mean.
We'll put it that way for now. Authenticity, if we push it all the way to its limit, with that, I don't really care what what your opinion is of how I present, can turn into something that can be destructive because that's the time when I may overstep some boundaries because I'm just keeping it real. You remember the Chappelle sketch?
Yes.
Where keeping it real goes
Keeping it
wrong.
real goes wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So like, I can keep it real all the time. There's a lot of people that keep it real that are behind bars or dead or in other trouble or turmoil because they don't know how to dampen their authenticity. But then at the same time, should we be dampening our authenticity? Like, this is why I was interested in this word, because there's so many ways to approach it, and there's so many ways to find freedom in it.
Right.
But then also there's a lot of ways where we can kind of
Be restrictive.
restrict. That's a perfect word for it. It can feel restricting because I can't.
That's very good.
But
Go ahead.
so like when keeping it real goes wrong example, what I like about that wasn't even always them being their authentic person. A lot of times that was people expect this of me.
Right.
This person slapped me in the face, stepped in my shoe. People expect that I have to wild out for that, right? And in not being authentic, but thinking about how is everybody was going to perceive me, that causes you to react in a way that's going to bring something unfortunate to you, because not being authentic, but I have to live up to the persona that I think everybody else sees. You know what I mean? So I think that's like another aspect of why, if you're going to get in trouble or have some kind of negative impact, at least let it be because that's the real you and not because you're trying to live up to somebody else's expectation.
So then my question becomes, how do we determine, or how does a person determine whether I'm acting based on my, persona or what I am trying to maybe avoid or whatever?
Very good question.
How do I differentiate between that type of response versus an authentic response? Because some people in a lot of people's minds, they're one and the same. Until you get in, we can go deep.
Right.
But until you get in touch with yourself,
Right.
and understand what is authentic, what is really authentic for you,
Yes.
then you're going to be bound to living out the reactions and responses of, the way that you present that quote unquote persona.
All right, so
Interesting.
It's very, very good thought, man. All what you guys said so far. I think to answer your question is I have a 3 rule for myself, and the 3 rules is the way, and I said this in an earlier podcast, is the way I'm currently thinking, is it harmful to myself or to others? And am I being absolutely genuine with my thoughts, toward the person and to myself? And the third one is, did I say harm already?
Yep.
I said harm, genuine, and the other one is, I think I did say, I think I said authentic.
Oh, what's the outcome? Like, what's going to be the result? Is that what your third one
Yeah,
is?
the third one was about what am I becoming in the process of all
Yes.
this.
Yep.
You
I
see what
remember
I'm
you
saying?
saying that one. Yeah.
So I think that those are the ways that I kind of gauge myself. Hypocrisy is the thing. Like, hypocrisy is the big one for me, right?
Okay.
And with if hypocrisy is there, are you authentic in your hypocrisy? Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but you have to be honest with yourself when you have in these questions, within your mind. And like you said, man, I totally understand how sensitive the topic or the word authentic is, because hypocrisy, once again, if you break it down from a Greek standpoint, it's hypocrisis, right? Which means putting on a mask. So I think that, like you said, like, how are you being authentic with different groups that you find yourself in? Remember, we were talking about code switching, and we're not talking about code switching or anything like this. We're talking about, because that's another subject in itself, right? But when you look at authenticity, I think you have to ask yourself the question, if is there any, oh man, I can't even find the right words to even describe what I'm trying to say right now. You know what I mean? Because I think that authenticity and being genuine is so important. But like you said, the personas that the flexibility, you know what I'm saying? The flexibility of your being itself, your identity, who you are, or whatnot. Because the people I hang around here, I have to engage with them a little differently. Once again, it's not code switching, but it's a relationship builder, right? You know what I'm saying? And
You deal with them according to the type of
relationships that you have, and I think that that's very important. And let me think this through a little bit further, all right? And I'm gonna pass the mic to you guys, but let me think about it, because I think that I want to, with the authenticity, I'm thinking about going down a certain path, and I'll bring it up in a minute. Let me just jot my thoughts down, all right?
Yeah, for sure.
Who's next?
I think the questions that you asked, I think, hit at the heart of trying to make sure your authentic self is uplifting to other people in a way, or it doesn't do any harm. But I think I'm kind of thinking of, like, back in work mode, like, the 5 whys, like going back to your question about how do you know whether what you're doing is authentic or the way you're thinking is authentic. And I think that that involves a type of, I want to say meditation for the lack of a better word, but sitting, reflecting, and asking yourself questions, right? So you had questions that, about, okay, well, if I'm going to do or say this, what's going to be the impact, who's going to be affected and how, so on and so forth. But I think the process of finding authenticity is sitting with yourself and asking a lot of questions. And I'm not saying this is like a one-time thing or something that's done overnight, but this over time process of, I've done this or I thought this way. And then asking, now, where did that thought come from? Yeah. Or why did I act in this way? Is it because something I learned from my own experiences, something that's in my mind to do, or did that come from somebody else? And even if it's in your mind to do, that still doesn't mean that it's your authentic thought. It could still be something that's trained or programmed in us too. So asking, is the way I'm acting, thinking, whatever, really coming from what's inside me? And I don't know what's a good, concise way to say that other than spending time with yourself. Because I know for me, it was a very uncomfortable, years-long process for me to unlearn the way I thought about some things, right? Because it involved me saying, I've said, I've thought, I've written on, I've taught on a lot of these different things. And in a lot of those cases, I had to sit quiet, alone, and ask myself, now, do you really think that? Do you really believe that? Is that really what you feel? And finding that difficult spot to be honest with myself enough to say, I don't think this is what I think. I don't think I've done this. I've said this. I've put on that persona, but at the heart of me, I don't think that's me anymore. And that process of realization, again, it's uncomfortable, but I don't really know if there's a short way to do that. It's sitting and evaluating every action, every word, every thought, and seeing, does that come from me or does that come from somebody else? Has that been learned from something else in my life? Right.
So you mentioned two things. The first thing you mentioned, you were looking for the word. I think you said it, but then you kind of glossed over it. But being a reflective person, or having a person being a person with a reflective nature, somebody that is just looking back, constantly observing yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If you can think of it in these terms, like just imagining looking at yourself, your behaviors, your interactions, your relationships from a third person perspective.
Right.
It's really not an easy thing to do, but it's possible.
Right.
And being able to do so will help you to kind of find some of those blind spots. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is just a comment on what you said about there not being a shortcut to unlearning things. To me, I think I don't think that's ever gonna. It's a never ending task.
Process. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
It's because you're constantly learning new things about yourself, about the way the world works, about the way relationships work.
Right.
And while you're learning new things, you're constantly unlearning the things the preconceived notions that you had before.
Good point.
So it's a constant process of picking up the newer things and letting go of the older things.
I like that.
And as long as we're doing that, then we're growing and evolving. But if we stop, that's when you become a closed-minded person, or somebody who is not able to evolve past where they currently stand or where they stood 5, 10, 20 years ago.
Right. I like that. That makes sense.
People like that, I mean, I would imagine that it's much harder for them to be authentic because you haven't grown to the point where first of all, growth doesn't happen by accident.
For sure.
You have to intentionally grow as a person.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain point, you grow. You might grow in size or in stature or things like that, or even in accomplishment. But in terms of inner growth, the leveling up of your soul and your spirit, the connection that you have with God, that junk is not an accident. Exactly. It has to be intentional.
Very true.
And so I say that to say that when you are growing, you're going to know. You know what I mean? Because you've set that path for yourself. Yes. You've established that this is what I want to do. Right. I want to grow. I want to become this.
I got a question for you. Do you think that noticing it is it easy to recognize? You understand what I'm saying?
I think I understand.
The number one question is growing in maturity an easy thing to recognize? And the second question I had in my mind is that a good thing or a bad thing? Not. You know what? I don't. The second question is not right. That's not the right question to ask. It's not about is it a good thing or bad thing. Because let's start off with the first question. All right.
So your first question was, is it easy to notice? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So the first question was, is it
easy to recognize?
Is it easy to recognize maturity and growth?
Yeah. I think, and I can only speak from my personal experience. I don't know, how other people might experience it, but for me, it was hard to recognize up front. Most of the growth that I had early on, after I started to set intentions to try to grow into a better is not the right word, but a more progressed human being. You know what I mean? I didn't recognize it until it was like in retrospect.
Right.
I was able to look back and realize, how the old church folks would say, look back and see how far you've come. That's a real thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But once you've done that enough times, you start to notice it sooner and sooner and sooner. So at one point, it might take me 6 months to realize that I got something that I prayed for, or something that I set an intention for, or that I reached a goal personally, internally, whatever. Then after a while of noticing it after 6 months, then maybe I notice it after a month. And then after a while, then I notice it after a few days. Because you become more and more sensitive to your own growth once you start to really know yourself, because I know who I am at this point. I have a good grasp on who Michael is as a person. And so when things start to change, I recognize it. You know what I'm saying? But that's a part of the growth.
So,
that recognizing the growth is a byproduct of the growth.
So, because there's a thing in automotive and our training is about if you can't measure, you can't improve.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of
that
one of the Lord Jesus. Yeah. If you can't measure it, it's how do you improve? Because you need to have a
benchmark,
standard. Yes, that's exactly right.
Point of reference.
A point of reference. Yeah. And so the reason why I'm saying that, and it's not a trick question. It was not meant to be a trick question.
Yeah, no, I didn't think
and the whole point is, once again, authentic, right? How long do you want to look back? And like you said, after a while, you start to know yourself, because are you losing momentum by looking back? You know what I'm saying? So even though if you can't measure, you can't improve, right? if you don't know how to measure, if you don't have that's not what I'm saying.
Can we qualify looking back though? Because
go ahead.
That as a phrase gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because looking back can mean different things. Church, we always talk about looking back in terms like Lot's wife. Like, I've left something and I'm looking back because I miss it, or I'm reminiscing, or I want to be back where I left from. Looking back in terms of growth is intentional. It's a part of the journey. It's that necessary reflection to say, especially in times when you're kind of down or doubtful or losing momentum, to look back as a means of remembering and being thankful that I'm not where I came from. So is it looking back missing what you came from, or is it looking back like, man, I've grown, I've made progress, and because it's easy to deny that progress sometimes and say I'm not getting anywhere, when you look back and you realize, wait, I'm not standing in the same place that I was back there. I've actually moved. I've actually made some progress. You have to confront the fact that you've grown some. So I think we got to be careful when we kind of use looking back to make sure we're talking about that looking back as a means of identifying where we came from.
Let me use this one. Keep your thought, because I want to make sure I just tag on his thought. And the reason why I was saying looking back, like when we ran track, our coaches say, and that's why I'm saying it depends on the context. The context is very important, and sometimes it can cause you to slow down. And that's the reason why I was saying when you're running in the race,
track
man,
perspective,
yeah, because what it is, your comparison and different things like that, right? And then you're removing yourself from your authenticity, right? Because of that lane that you're staying in by dabbling into somebody else's lane, looking back, right? But that is it's necessary to learn with those pains. It's necessary to learn as a point of reference at first. But after you start to gain momentum, do you really need to look back further? That's what I'm saying. Like, after a while, because Mikey, you just said it, once you start to understand the momentum and you knowing yourself,
you get into a rhythm.
Man. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Get into a groove.
Go ahead, bro.
So I was going to say, in response to what you were saying about how retrospection is necessary, somebody sent me a text yesterday that said, understanding your testimony is more than enough to know that God's got your back. What are we without our testimonies? And what is a testimony if not a memory of some time, some trial, something that we thought we might not make it through? and then we did. That's literally what it's a testimony. You know what I mean? It's testimony is an account of a past event, but that's how we define testimony. We don't define it like Webster. We define it like Jesus.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Right. But anyway, so yeah, being able to look back and remember the times when you survived tumultuous situations is how you start to find that rhythm. You know what I mean? That groove that you're talking about.
Perfect.
The way you really get into it is by remembering, oh yeah, it's easier to have faith because the last time I didn't even have faith or my faith was weak,
That's it.
things fell through exactly how they should, or in my favor, or at least they fell through in such a way where I was able to grow from it, where there was a lesson there. There's always a benefit.
That's it, man. That's it, 100%.
But anyway, okay, so then getting back to authenticity, being able to never mind. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Let me hold on. Let me.
Oh, you're thinking about
like
it?
Ethan said. Let me hold on. I want to think about it for just a minute.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think authenticity, it should be one of those words that we talk about a little bit more. Because when we
should do a podcast on it.
I think we should. And we should call it Let Your Words Count, everybody. Yeah, so I do want to address something, this persona that's very interesting to me, right? When you brought up persona, and that I had to look up the definition. It says the aspect of someone's character that is presented to or perceived by others.
Exactly.
Right? That's powerful, man. Because when you talk
a real
about
thing.
it really is, because you want to present yourself to the highest caliber in all aspects of life. You just don't walk out the house and say, you know what, I'm just going to be a loser today. No, you know what I'm saying? You want to genuinely be authentic.
So I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I think I'm starting to kind of connect these. I don't know if the neurons are starting to kind of fire
That's
off
all right,
a little
man.
bit, but
Love it.
I think that so I'm starting to feel like I'm getting an answer to the question that we started with, which is how to connect authenticity and the persona or personas. Could it be that it's trying to have your personas, all of them, be as similar to one another as possible, to the person that you are looking to be or to become? So for instance, obviously I can't talk to you the same way that I would talk to, my superior at work, or maybe not the same way that I would talk to a small child or a stranger or, any number of different interactions. But if I can make them to the point where it's always me, so like if you met my boss, y'all would have a similar understanding of who I am as a person. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think having that align as closely as possible with a goal in mind of the type of person that this should be, because obviously we're all growing into whoever we're going to become. You never stop becoming, really.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But if we can get those to align, I think that might be.
Yeah.
That just hit me just now.
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
smiling because that was one of the first things that came up. I didn't want to say it then because I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it the right way. But we did hypocrisy a couple episodes ago, right? And in talking about hypocrisy, it was looking at when you don't have alignment between the values that you state or the things that you say you are, you believe, whatever, and your actions. So when there's a misalignment between what you say and what you do, that's hypocrisy. And I think in terms of authenticity, the more aligned ego is with persona, I think that's the synergy you're looking for authenticity. When who I am to me is who I present to other people.
Yes.
That's where I think authenticity is. Like you said, the reconciling of all those different personas into the ego and the way I see myself and am with myself when alone, my true me.
Right.
The more that aligns with the persona, that's where I think is that zone of like authenticity.
I think so too.
Right.
I think the only thing that's missing from that equation is the goal of who that ego is supposed to be. So if it's just because then you get back into you can fall into the pitfall of keeping it real
Got
goes
you.
wrong,
Got you.
right? Because this is who I am.
So incorporating some kind of goal or
Exactly.
intention on who I want,
but
who I
that's-
want to become, right? What am I becoming? Yep, I
Yeah,
like
that-
that. I
but
like
the-
that.
but the-
Right, exactly, because that
Yep.
lines with Ethan's thing.
Yep.
because that's superficial.
Yeah.
After a while, that authenticity actually becomes superficial.
Right. If it's not guided. If you don't have a goal for who you're looking to be.
Interesting. I got you.
So
I
like
got you.
so like we say,
Okay.
for instance, let's see.
Yes.
Let's
yes, that's it.
I don't know. Oh, okay. So here's the army. Be all that you can be. Or or the Bible. Be perfect for I am perfect. Or I mean any number of other ways that becoming.
Becoming.
So if that's your goal, if my goal is to be all that I can be, or my goal is to be perfect, or my goal is to achieve excellence, then my ego is going to start to track along that path. And if I can line my persona up with where that ego is going,
Wow.
I think that's the answer. I think that's how we might reach authenticity. I don't know. We still got to kind of mull it over.
Hold on. You said that because you're. Hold on. Okay. So you said that the ego comes along as almost like a stowaway. Is that kind of like what you're saying? Like the first, you have a goal in mind and you're tracking towards that goal of authenticity.
Okay.
But there's this part that's stowing away. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's more like, so again, if we define ego, which to me just represents a person's the way a person would see themselves.
Perception of self.
Exactly, a perception of self.
Perception of self by self. Persona, perception of self by others. Right.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Okay. So then using that framework, if ego, or if I set my desires to be excellent or to be perfect or to be holy or to be righteous or to be whatever, that's how I'm going to start seeing myself if I set that as my intention. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So I grow towards it as I set that intention. I make moves that reflect that. And so then my ego becomes that. And as long as I'm being that, I know what you mean.
I know. So to me, I love that because this is the thing is, when can it become harmful? Okay, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like how, because with authenticity,
I think with that approach, it's not really gonna become harmful. As long as it depends on where your goals are, obviously. You know what I mean? It depends on who you're looking to become. I'm good. Go ahead. I was just answering.
No. You good? No, keep going.
I think it only really becomes something where it's harmful when you don't have the like we talked about before, the self-reflection.
Yeah.
When you don't have the direction that you're trying to grow in, treat yourself like a bonsai tree. Prune yourself at the places where it's growing out of shape. And grow in the right direction. If you don't apply that type of approach to life, then your authentic self is going to be somebody who might be a piece of crap.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's what I think when you bring up the persona, it keeps coming up with this authenticity and with ego. I think I guess my wires are getting twisted a little bit because I want to just like, bam, hit that home run with it. And I think I'm still struggling with it a little bit. I understand genuine and I do understand authenticity. But when you put those factors into place where...
Talking about ego and persona?
Yeah, man. Like when you put those other things that come along with that, I think my struggle is... because I want to do everything right, right, within my mind, but I know that I'm a human, right? I have flaws, but this nice, shiny, juicy thing out there, called genuine authenticity and whatnot that I'm reaching for. I think my wires are getting twisted because, like the last episode, I want to look at chaos. And this has nothing to do with authenticity, but it does in a way. What I'm saying is I want to ask the question, am I being authentic right now? All right? I want to understand what are the measures that we can teach others to be authentic within themselves.
What's the practical application?
What's the practical application, right? When that ego starts to stir up, but that ego actually say, I see an opportunity. You know what I'm saying? To take you down this path right now. Like I said, I might have my wires twisted concerning this thing because I want to think about, I want to recognize, I want to consider the outcomes, the pitfalls. That's what I'm saying. I want to consider the pitfalls that might come with taking authenticity too far. Kind of like what you said earlier about the hood is going to tell you how authentic you are, and it didn't work out for you. Right. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like what I was thinking about, man. You know, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you know.
So go ahead.
No, because I don't know if there's I don't know if there's a negative side in being authentic, unless that authentic you, like we said, right, has no regard for other people or for the wellness of others or things like that. Because even like when we were kind of looking at, you know, our template or whatnot, like authenticity, like said, it kind of goes to that negative place when either it's I guess not either, but you know, when it's a person that is being authentic or using authenticity as an excuse to be rash or apathetic or inconsiderate to somebody else's feelings.
Say that again.
Like the negative implication of being authentic is if you use authenticity as an excuse to be blunt, rash, abrasive, whatever. I'm being me. Don't get mad at me. How come you're not accepting me being myself and me telling you that you stink, right? So things like that. It's like if I'm not considering, if I'm using, well, I'm just being authentic as an excuse and as a reason to be hurtful and framing that as I'm just blunt or whatever the case is, right? That's when I think there's harm. I don't know if
that's it.
But again, if that's the real you,
that's the question that I would ask.
That may be harming some. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is that really authentic, or is it a defense mechanism? Is it a trauma response?
That goes back to
understanding yourself.
What do we do? What's the practical application to evaluate?
Yes.
Is what I'm doing, saying, thinking, believing, whatever, is that me?
That's it.
Or is that an influence from somebody else or somewhere else, right? So this kind of reminds me of the conversation we were having the other day of the measurement of what do I find fulfillment in? What do I find pleasure in? And being honest when you're asking yourself those questions, like, okay, I just told this person that they stink and I laughed. And I walked away from it and told them they just need to deal with it, deal with me being blunt or whatever. Did that really satisfy you? And if that really satisfies you that you hurt this person or made them feel bad or you were being blunt or whatever, that may be the authentic you. But that also might not qualify as a quote unquote good person to other people, right? So it might, authenticity being harmful to you versus being harmful to others is, I guess, kind of where I'm kind of coming back to. We got to clarify
I think
that.
That's. Go ahead, Mike. You were going to say something.
Yeah. I'm reading something. I just typed into Chat GPT because I kind of want to figure out a way to bring this kind of out of the esoteric space and maybe just ground it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to work. We're going to read it if y'all don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then hopefully it'll make sense. Okay. So I'm on Chat GPT. Very sorry. I'm on Chat GPT and I typed in I asked it to give me a parable that would help to define the persona and the ego.
Gotcha.
And so this is what it came up with. I'm going to try to read through this clearly, but also quickly. The Gardener and the Rose is the name of the story. Once there was a gardener who spent years tending to his garden, which was known for its vibrant roses. His roses were admired by everyone in the town, bright, fragrant, and perfectly symmetrical. He carefully nurtured them, watering them daily, protecting them from pests, and ensuring they had enough sunlight to bloom beautifully. The gardener's persona was built on his expertise in cultivating these roses. He was known far and wide as the master gardener, and his roses were his absolute pride. His persona became intertwined with his garden. He spent so much time presenting his garden to others, showing it off to visitors, and gaining praise that he began to define himself by it. I am the master of roses, he would say. My worth is in these flowers. However, deep inside the gardener's ego, his internal sense of self began to grow attached to this image. He needed others to see him as the master gardener, as the person who made these roses thrive. His self-esteem was built on the praise he received, and he started to feel insecure when people no longer admired his work or when his roses didn't bloom as perfectly as before. One season, a harsh winter came and damaged many of the roses. Y'all good to keep going?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The gardener tried everything to revive them, but some of them withered, their petals turning brown and falling away. Despite his best efforts, the garden was no longer the picture-perfect paradise. Ooh, it once was. I like the alliteration. All right, the gardener felt devastated. He lost his sense of worth. I have failed, he thought. Without these roses, who am I? How can I be the master gardener if my roses are no longer beautiful? He was crushed, not just by the damage to his garden, but by the loss of the identity that the garden had given him. In a moment of despair, the gardener went to the old wise woman in the village, known for her deep understanding of life. My roses are dying, the gardener said. Without them, I feel like I have no purpose. Who am I now, if not the gardener of these beautiful roses? The wise woman listened quietly, then said, the roses are beautiful, yes, but they are not your true self. You are the gardener, and it is you who makes the roses bloom, not the other way around. The beauty of your garden comes from your care, your patience, your wisdom, not from the flowers themselves. I'm going to read that sentence again. The beauty of your garden comes from your care, your patience, your wisdom, not from the product, not from the thing that they become, not from the flowers themselves. It's what you put in that is your value.
It's the effort, not the output.
Yes, the gardener took this wisdom to heart. Over time, he realized that his ego had been built on his garden and the admiration of others. His persona was rooted in being the master of the perfect roses, but his true self, his sense of self, was the care, attention, and love he poured into the garden. It was not about perfection, nor about the applause from others, but his connection to the earth and the process of growth. Whew, I'm about to shout. The next season, he tended to his garden, not for the recognition or to impress others, but for the joy of the process itself. Wow. The roses may have been imperfect, but they bloomed with greater beauty than before, not because of his pursuit of perfection, but because he embraced his authentic self, no longer relying on external validation.
That's deep.
Here's a brief explanation, a couple sentences. The ego in this parable represents the gardener's sense of self, initially built on external validation and his persona as the master of roses. His ego was fragile because it relied on the perfect flowers and the admiration of others rather than on his own inherent worth. The persona is the image the gardener presents to others, a persona of someone who has mastered the art of cultivating beautiful roses. This image became the mask the gardener wore in society, representing success, skill, and mastery. The gardener's transformation illustrates how ego and persona can lead to an unhealthy attachment to external accomplishments or praise. Only when he shifted his focus from outward recognition to his internal connection with his work did he regain his true sense of self. There's a couple more, but that's
Bro,
more than good enough.
That is like so powerful, man, and that's something that I've been talking to G about earlier this morning.
Really?
The exact same thing, man. I was talking about embrace the process.
Yeah.
You know, we focus too much on the reward.
Yep.
When the beauty is the journey. It's
Yes.
nothing more powerful than the journey.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I was saying that I'm getting my wires mixed up about authenticity, because I know that ego and persona plays a role in that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It plays a role in that.
Yes.
And it's very important. It's vital to the growth. How can you get authenticity unless there is a challenge? You see what I'm saying? You gotta be challenged in order for authenticity to be true, you know?
I agree.
And he did not recognize that in this story, which is a very, I applaud you for actually thinking about plugging that in for that bird. That's awesome, because it paints and creates a nice landscape for us to build off of. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that really answered my question.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Can I add? I heard what you said. I think, because I know what we've been talking about. I keep stuttering. So I know what we've been talking about, right? And I want to maybe clarify for myself what you just said. Because when you said, like, you know, how can you know whether it's authentic without chaos, you said.
Yeah, chaotic.
So I think the way I'm processing and interpreting that based on our past conversations is kind of like that. How do you know what the light is if you've never experienced darkness?
Yeah.
Yep.
So for you to know the authentic self, you have to have had some. I can't know who Gary is dealing with stress if I've never had stress to deal with. I can't know how I react under pressure if I've never been put under pressure. So that need of external stimuli or catalyst to kind of test me
Absolutely.
and show me who I am in the midst of all these rough situations or whatever is going to kind of help me develop a sense of my true and whole self. If I've only experienced happy, pleasant times and never been tried, I might think I'm a strong person, but if I've never been tested, I might get tested by my first trial and fail and realize I'm not as strong as I thought I was.
Beautiful, man.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
I love it. Yes.
That's
Perfect.
it, man.
Mike Tyson.
Perfect. Yes. I know, right? Put the quote.
You know, I love
Man.
these conversations because, man, I think what it is the challenge where it's about expansion.
Yeah.
You know, we're expansion them fibers. You know what I mean? We're challenging ourselves because we want to be better creatures in the sight of God. I really believe that. I don't believe our Creator just set us up here to just be failures and just follow a program that don't really benefit our souls. But I think the program that I don't even want to call it a program, because a program is, to me, can be manipulated, right? And I don't really care for that much. But we're talking about authenticity here. And I want to really, I'm so glad. You just don't know how happy I'm glad that we brought this up, because that's what I'm saying. And I want to go back to this, and I'm not even trying to beat a dead horse. It's very important to challenge ourselves with that chaos a little bit, and really ask yourself the question, am I being this? Am I being that? Am I being hypocritical? Am I being genuine right now?
Describe the chaos. You mentioned chaos a couple times. What do you mean by that?
Because that's kind of what stumped me at first, because I think we're getting into kind of two different aspects of authenticity, because authenticity is being true to yourself. But I think the chaos aspect that you're bringing to it is, how do you know the fullness of your character if you haven't been tried and tested in a number of ways to see, how do I react across this spectrum of experiences, not this singular path or what I think, right? So developing your sense of self based on, I've experienced some things. I've had years of trials, errors, failures, whatever. And based on all those things, I have a more well-rounded understanding of myself, as opposed to me having never been tested or tried in anything.
Absolutely.
So kind of, it's a different aspect of it. I see where you're going, but I think I was initially kind of on this true to self kind of thing, but you're bringing in this other aspect of, how do you really know that what you define as yourself is really the fullness of it, right?
That's it. Because I was thinking to myself, like, what if somebody says, the persona, somebody comes to you and says that you are this, you're that. You know what I mean? Flat out lying
What
to
you
you.
mean?
So the gardener.
Yeah.
he had this perception of how this gardener persona is, but he had never faced a harsh winter.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So after facing this harsh winter and realizing I can't keep these flowers blooming after this harsh winter, but when the next season comes around, I've restored the garden and it came back. He had this idea of himself as this perfect, flawless gardener until he had this external stimuli come along that he couldn't overcome, but he persisted and stayed with it and was able to that next season bring that garden back to its full bloom and do even better. So he had a better understanding of himself as the gardener, as a gardener that can say there might be some winters where I can't overcome it, but by intention and by persistence and diligent effort, I can bring that garden back in the year that follows after that.
Man.
He had a more full understanding of his capabilities as a gardener, having gone through that harsh winter, whereas before he went through that, he didn't think it was possible for him to have a bad year. So it kind of filled out his understanding of himself a little bit more.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, G. I mean, I don't have the, but I truly believe that answers the chaotic or the chaos. It really does. Because if you don't experience that, you know what I mean? How can you truly be true to yourself? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, someone, man, listen, man, you know, our perfect example, Jesus, man. You know what I mean? I mean, a crown of thorns, chaos.
Wow.
Straight up chaos. You know, this man didn't deserve that. He did not deserve that. But he took the burdens and went down authentic. And that's what I'm saying. That we are going to experience that same thing. When you know you don't necessarily deserve that. But like going back to the gardener, I know it's kind of an offshoot of that. But that man that personified his character based off of a product when he was really the institute or the instrument behind the beauty. You see what I'm saying? That's what we have to find within ourselves. You know what I mean? I think we try to look for validation out of others. When no, that's not the case. You already talked about the measurement. When how do you improve unless you are able to measure? If you can't improve, if you don't know how to measure, you got to measure to improve. And that's kind of what I'm saying about the chaos. That's why you have to embrace the bad things, right?
Yeah.
So when the good things come, you just like, man, this is valuable now. But go ahead, man.
No, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I'm good. That's the reason why, like, when you look at scripture, all things work together for the good. That's why you're able to grab everything and grow from it. That's what I'm saying, man. But go ahead, bro.
No, I'm looking at that parable again because that really was
Powerful, man.
that was powerful. But the measurement, knowing what to measure. Right. He was measuring himself by, look at how beautiful my flowers are, and not realizing that you should be measuring yourself by nobody cares for your garden the way you do, has the patience, has the diligent effort, has the know-how, has all these things. He was measuring are the flowers at full bloom and rosy red and everything else, and that's it. Not acknowledging, not even realizing that his character, the meaningful parts of his character were in everything that came before that and that built it up. And that's just hitting me hard. You know what I mean? As far as like, measurement is important, but what do you measure? Because if you get measuring the wrong thing, the outcome of that calculation is going to look a lot different. You know what I mean? Than if you're measuring the things that really matter, and that he wasn't looking at the thing that made him a masterful gardener. He was looking at something else as like the output of it. But he can still be a master gardener, have a harsh winter. That he thought that harsh winter changed it and made it where he wasn't a good gardener. That wasn't the case. Yeah, you know what I mean. And that's just deep. It's just
really deep.
But measuring the right thing.
But you know what was awesome about this? And this is my last thought, right? My final thought. And if you guys want to continue, that's fine.
I'm done, bro.
Yeah, but this one really deep.
Mind's blown.
It's really deep. You know, and I was just thinking about going back to the gardener thing. It took someone outside of him to see the value that he had by going to the lady. And sometimes your surrounding and your peripherals are so important to your growth as well.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I just wanted to add that. Yeah. If he didn't go to that lady was like, here, this is what the situation is, sir. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Consider my words. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's so important, man.
It really is. It's crazy that you said that because that's exactly where I was going with it too.
Crazy.
So, in addition to having a solid circle around you, you also have to be able to observe yourself.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Being able, if the gardener, before he went to visit the wise woman, I think that visit was absolutely critical. But even without that, or before that, or after that, or whatever, if he sat and tried to deconstruct the way he was feeling, find the origins of
Where are they coming from?
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So like how you were saying that you do what am I becoming? Am I adding anything to myself by this behavior, this thought process, whatever? Being able to be reflective, self-reflective, and honest. Listen, you might as well not do those times of reflection or meditation and things like that if you're not going to be honest. Because if you can't be honest with yourself,
Yes.
How are you gonna be as anybody else?
Yeah.
how can you ever be honest about anything?
Powerful, dude.
Honesty. So this is the way I look at it. There's been a lot of times where I've lied to myself about who I am, what I've done, things like that. But the thing is that I can be honest with myself, and y'all would never. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's gonna keep my It's like having a journal within yourself. I like to journal, but I'm saying like just the fact that whether it's written or just saying it out loud in private or just in your own head, being able to be honest with yourself, it's literally the cornerstone of authenticity.
So true.
Have to start there.
There's nothing else. There's no way you can be authentic with yourself or with anybody else if you're not willing to be brutally, bluntly, unrelentingly honest with yourself. Because that's the only way you'll be able to find some of those blind spots. That's the only way you'll be able to acknowledge some of your own shortcomings. We all have shortcomings. It's a fact. Being able to acknowledge them, and not only acknowledge them. Here's another key point, though. Not just acknowledge them, but have grace with yourself in spite of them. Because there's some times where we can find something that we consider to be a shortcoming about ourselves, and then we beat ourselves up about it, and then we never really grow from it because now we're afraid to some degree. But if you give yourself grace to realize, okay, so this is a part of me that I would like to never show ever. This is a part of me that I want to understand is here. It's here. It ain't going nowhere. Sometimes it'll, it might get real quiet. But the parts of us that are less than excellent are they are. They might be passed from generations. They might be, who knows? But my thing is, if you can look at yourself, wow. Okay, I just happened to look down and saw the word that I was getting ready to say. That's crazy. If we can find self-acceptance in spite of shortcomings or inadequacies, then we can become authentic.
I love it.
I can accept the fact that I have a lazy streak. I can accept the fact that I want things that are not always good for me. You know what I'm saying? I accept that about myself. And now that I'm honest about that fact, because I know that about myself, I can be more authentic in every place that I show up.
I love it.
Because I'm not mad about it.
Right.
I just have to figure out a way around it. I just got to avoid it, or I just have to not avoid it. That's the wrong word. Confront it.
Confront it, yes.
I have to confront it and realize that is what it is. And then I address or respond accordingly.
And that response can be, because like you said, self-acceptance, right? I have this shortcoming. It's a part of me. It's there. But you can also go to a point, accept and love that it's here right now. But if that's not ultimately who you want to be, you're making a decision that, okay, this is who I am today, and that's fine. But tomorrow I'm going to be this. And when you respond to life accordingly, to kind of consciously make those changes into what you want to be, not hating who you are presently, but it's okay to still have goals and be moving towards what that future thing is going to be as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the strength in what you just said is the fact that it's so easy for us to lie to ourselves.
So easy.
So easy and so common. That's why that's
too easy.
That's what makes that statement so heavy, man, because it's like it's so easy and so common to lie to ourselves, bro.
It's very easy and very, very common.
I apologize. I forgot we were recording for a while and we were up there talking, man. But that was a good discussion.
No, that was good, man. Very good. Hey, everyone. This is Let Your Words Count. My name is Ethan Merriweather. This is Gary Gant and Michael Wilson. We're signing off. Please like, share, subscribe.
Wait, hold on. I got something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Not only, where's the camera? This is my camera here.
Right there.
He got his finger right.
Okay. Not only like, share, and subscribe, but get your DMF. Can you see that? I feel like I'm milking a baby. Nursing a baby. Get your DMF gear. Gary's got his on. Ethan's got his on. We got some pretty cool stuff. It is forgedforinfinity.com.
Yep.
Yeah,
Forged number 4 infinity.
Forged the number 4 infinity.com. We got some new summer gear. We got more colors coming out. It's going to be pretty cool. The whole brand is specifically about the ideas behind every design and behind the brand is exactly the type of concepts that we've been covering in this podcast. That's our entire goal with everything we do, whether it's with talking, sometimes we do some music. These guys release the music, and sometimes we do clothing. There's a whole lot of stuff. There's a whole lot of stuff that we do, and it's all for the betterment of ourselves and our community. And so we invite you to join us. Take part. I mean, dive in, talk in the comments, do whatever it takes to get engaged, because that'll help us to be able to continue to do this. And with that, anything else? We're going to go ahead and sign off. Peace.
Peace.